Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and we're back.
We're back.
Sitting here recording. I got to go a whole month without seeing Bradley's stupid, smug little twink face.
Well, to be fair, for viewers at home, it's only been a week since they've heard of us.
That is true.
Yeah. For us, though.
For us, it's been a while since we've hopped on one of these podcast recording calls.
Oh my god. It really has been a long time. We probably shouldn't ever do this again like this. I mean, whereas it was fun and it was nice that we had this
nice. A break was nice.
A vacation. I don't know if it works in the long term because I feel like we're almost not out of practice, but like it's like
right. I feel we're lucky that Moon Knight is coming out right now as we're recording, because Goldsquadrongays like deep lore here. When Bradley and I first started recording the show, we were still trying to find our podcast voices. And particularly, we were trying to work out like our verbal back and forth with each other. So a lot of times we would hop on to do the recording, and then we would spend about 30 minutes warming up by talking about WandaVision before we even got into the Star Wars episode.
Yeah.
Like that was how we like developed our back and forth. And we'd be like, okay, we're into it now. Let's hit the recording. Let's do the Mandalorian. We do have a few housekeeping things. We're going to pre-record a few of the next few episodes. So up front, for the next words, let me try this again. So just to be upfront, here's the plan. For the next 5 weeks, we are going to cover the last 5 episodes of the Clone Wars microseries, the ones from 2005. We have another week of a bonus thing that we're still talking about what we want to do for that. So we're not going to come out and say it because at time of recording, that is a month and a half away. But keep your ear to the ground for that. And then by the time we finished all that, we'll take a week off and then we'll dive into our Obi-Wan Kenobi 0. Before we hop into our discussion, though, we have a few housekeeping things. First and foremost, Bradley, I believe you just had a show premiere.
Yeah. So when were we talking about this show? I don't remember what we were recording.
I think we were doing Bad Batch.
Okay.
When were you filming this show? It was last year. Summer of last year.
Yeah.
Bad Batch. So. You were jetting around back and forth because you were going to like Nashville. You were going to
New York.
These random spots.
Yeah.
And trying to record Bad Batch on the air. And we mentioned like, oh yeah, when the show comes out,
we'll talk about it.
Well, the show's apparently out.
Yes. So we're recording on April 1st, April Fool's, but this is not a joke. So today they decided to air the show that I was working on today on Netflix. It is called Get Organized, the Home Edit. And it is a reality / documentary show now, because they kind of trying to change it up a little bit this season, that focuses on the social media phenomenon, the home edit, where the two hosts go to regular people's houses and then also celebrities' houses and organize their pantry or their closet or their room or whatever. They came to Atlanta last year for the first time, and I was asked to work on the show, and I was like, okay, sure.
Oh, he's so fancy. He's getting asked to work for things.
Asked to work on the show.
Have to go and look for jobs like us plebs.
Exactly. So they asked me to
work.
You're
just so good at what you do.
It was only for a week. And I was doing like the basic, kind of get on a show stuff. And then they left Atlanta and it was all hunky-dory. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll watch the show when it comes out. And then a couple weeks after that, they were like, hey, we're coming back to Atlanta to keep filming. Do you want to come back on the show? And I was like, fuck yeah, like I'll get on there, And I worked with them for another week. And then they were like, hey, we're going to Nashville. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, really? Like, I'm not doing that much work. They're like, yeah, but we like you, so just come with us. And I was like, okay. And so
For
I went to
context,
Nashville.
we are trying to review the Bad Batch while all this is going on. So
Right.
all those weekly like back and forths where we're having like days where we're recording on my iPhone, that's all happening while Bradley is doing this.
Right. And I'm like recording in hotel rooms because now I'm in Nashville. And then they were like, oh, by the way, next week we're doing New York City. Do you want to come to New York? And I was like, yeah, free trip to New York.
He's dropping these things on me like the week before.
The
He's
week
like,
before.
oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to New York. And I'm like,
yeah. So long story long, we made it through, we recorded, but I did all these shows, New York, Nashville. It was so much fun. The hosts are great. And then we had our wrap party in New York. And then I came back to Atlanta, and that was that, and I just kind of didn't think about it that much anymore. Because when you do a show and you wrap your show, you're like, all right, next project. You don't think,
you've worked on at least 2 shows, I think, since then.
Yes. So I just finished a show recently that'll come out in a couple months, hopefully. That's definitely different than what I've ever worked on because I only work on reality shows pretty exclusively. This is my first competition show.
If you're wondering why I hate Bradley with such an intense passion, it's because he works on reality TV.
I'll definitely bring up the competition show whenever it airs. I don't know when, but we just wrapped, so hopefully within the next 6 months it'll come out.
So yeah, the next time you and your friends are wine drunk in your apartment and you need some shitty reality television to put on, Get Organized, the home edit is there on Netflix for you. I personally will probably be watching it sometime next week, mostly just so I can embarrass Bradley with it, because
that's right.
What are co-hosts for?
Oh, and I'm surprising you with this news now, because
really?
I just remembered.
I fucking hate when you do this, but please continue.
I'm not gonna tell you how or like where to get this information, is because especially since I'm recording this and letting other people know. Also, a couple months ago, I had told you this, that I was asked to help out a friend who was working on another show.
This. Yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So there was another reality show.
I looked this up now.
Okay, so there was another reality show that my friend was working on that we both worked on. This is the only reason why I brought this up, is because we both worked on Get Organized together. She was the costume department on Get Organized. And Lord. She asked me, she was like, hey, I'm filming this show over in Athens. It's a reality show. It's a new reality show. And they need somebody to be on the show, to go on a blind date with one of the cast members. And I was like, so why the fuck are you talking to me?
Because you're obviously single, Bradley.
I guess so. She asked me, she's like, hey, would you mind going on this blind date? And I was like, no. I was like, I do not want to do that. No. She's like, well, if you do come or whatever, she's like, we'll pay you to stay in this hotel, blah, 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 blah. I was not paid to be on this reality show, by the way. So for all you people out there who ever want to be on TV or you're going to go on TV, you always get an appearance fee, no matter what you're doing. I don't care if you are the lowest of the low being on TV, even extras make money. Okay. I don't care if it's $50 a day and a meal, or what a normal appearance fee is. If you're speaking on camera, is usually around $200 for appearance fee, up to $200. I did not ask for that. So I probably should have.
That was a mistake.
That was definitely a mistake. To be fair, I don't even know if they cut my segment that I was on this show, because I don't watch the show. But long story, even longer, because I keep telling these long stories. I went on this blind date. It was terrible. And I hope I was giving good face. I was honestly, my thought in my brain when I was on this show and I was on this blind date, I was thinking like, okay, this is terrible. I can't believe I did this. I should at least make good expressions or make interesting faces for the camera so that hopefully people will meme the fuck out of me so that I get famous from being a meme or something.
So Bradley has told me about this. We are not going to say the name of the show on the off chance.
Hell no, we're not going to say the name.
We're not going to say the name of the show. But to be clear, on the off chance they do air Bradley's scenes, and you follow me on Twitter, if I discover this, I will be memeing the hell out of this.
There you go. He'll do it for me.
That'll be the revelation. Here, it'll stand as a funny story about you going on a blind date, unless they air it, and then I'm going to turn it into a meme.
Well, I'm hoping that maybe like I said something really funny during the date that hopefully becomes a TikTok sound or something, and that people start using that, because that would be really hilarious if that happened. I would be totally fine with that. Like if I say something really hilarious, if people randomly find this show and randomly watch it and randomly decide to take the audio and put it on TikTok and then make it a hilarious fucking thing, or remix it with a popular song or whatever, I don't know. Do it, internet, do your thing, and I will collect a check. Thank you.
I will decide between now and the potential airing of this episode, Bradley, how hard I want to bully you and how many people I want to enlist into doing this.
I mean, honestly, last time I checked, unless you have like some kind of cable or something, you can't watch the whole thing. But if you don't have cable, you can watch I think up to 8 episodes or something like that of this show. I just didn't want to put in the work and watch the show to see what episode I'm in, because it doesn't clearly state the thing that's happened, that date happened in the episode. So
I will investigate, but it is a funny story.
Regardless. It is a hilarious story.
Speaking of things that we are not going to be talking about after talking about reality TV for 10 minutes, we have seen the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer. We have thoughts on the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer. We're not going to share those thoughts here. And I'm bringing this up because we've gotten some new listeners since the last time we had a currently airing show. So we do know about the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer. We've seen it, but we always do an episode 0 before any of these shows start. And we recap all the marketing that's come up to that point, all the speculation that's come up to that point, any trailers they've released up to that point. That's when we cover it. So expect us to talk about Obi-Wan Kenobi, in part because we're recording 2 or 3 of these tonight and then 2 or 3 of these in a week or two. But they have to be sort of timeless. So expect us to talk about that trailer a little further down the line when we talk about the Obi-Wan Kenobi episode 0, where we talk about all the mark. As far as other stuff, Star Wars Celebration. So I've announced on Twitter, I will reiterate here and do the official announcement here that I will be there all 4 days. Because I live roughly an hour away from the Anaheim Convention Center. I got a 4-day pass and took the time off work.
Nice.
Bradley will not be there, which frankly is probably for the best.
I'll be there in Force Ghost spirit.
He'll be there in spirit. He'll be there. Frankly, Bradley, if we were there, I would be spending most of the time trying to find creative ways to either shove you off of the Anaheim Convention Center or shove you into attractive older rich men
I would
to try to get podcast funding. And frankly, these two things would both be incredibly distracting for me.
I would probably just end up making business cards for us and being like, watch Gold Squad or listen to Goldsquadrongays on Apple Podcasts, and just drop them all on the floor. As I walk around the convention center.
If anyone does know where to make custom masks, though, because masks and vaccination is required if you're going to go to Celebration this year, I kind of want to get a Goldsquadrongays custom mask to wear around so that people can easily identify me, because unless you follow our TikTok or my personal Twitter, you really don't know what my face looks like.
Right.
So it'd be hard to identify me, but I will be at Star Wars Celebration. You can find me. I will be wandering around all 4 days. Wherever the collection of the hottest men is, you will find me orbiting kind of off to the side, watching that. And finally, Bradley, before we dive into the Clone Wars microseries, I have a story for you.
Oh, okay. Only 15 minutes later, but that's fine.
Only 15 minutes later.
But I don't care.
I promise you the story is worth it. So I recently flew to Pennsylvania to see my best friend and his girlfriend.
Okay.
I hadn't seen them since 2017, so it had been almost 2019, so it had been almost 3 years since we had been in the same room together, all three of us, and the last occasion was not an occasion that was fun for any of us. So I went down there, I flew down there for the weekend to hang out, and the first night I was there, my best friend was still at work, so his girlfriend and I went and had dinner together, complained about him relentlessly, then went back to the apartment to wait for him. And we were having a conversation, and somehow it turned to the subject of their bookcases. They've got in their main room, they've got bookcases like lining the room full of books and DVDs and things like that. And somehow we got on the subject of these bookcases, and somehow we both were like, didn't I like loan you guys a book back when we all lived in Atlanta together? And we start going through these bookcases meticulously to try to find anything that looks like it might be a book that belongs to me. We did not find that. What we found instead was, I sort of reached in and pulled it out when I saw it because I was a little bit confused. I was like, does he have the case? Like, what's going on here? I pulled it out. He's like, no, he's actually got this. My best friend, as it turns out, has the original trilogy on VHS from before it was altered. He has the theatrical cuts.
No.
He's just had them sitting on his shelves.
What?
For like the last 5 years. And I have never noticed.
What?
And he has never brought it up.
You're like, can I take these?
I put it back on the shelf like very carefully, and I turned to her, I was like, do you understand what you have here?
Right.
You have like the holy grail of Star Wars copies. You have the theatrical cuts. All of them.
Oh my God. They need to go to Goodwill immediately and buy a VHS player and a recorder or something so they can digitize it.
I was like, you need to digitize this shit immediately.
Yes, immediately.
Yeah, they've got it. It's sitting on his shelf. It was one of his parents owned them and
wow,
had passed them on to him. I'm like, we should buy a VHS player so I can watch them.
Just so you can watch them, yeah.
Well, because I pulled out my phone to text you, and then I went, no,
save it.
No, I need to get his live reaction.
Save it for the podcast.
Save it for the podcast. So yes, that is the story I wanted to tell you. Bradley, ready to dive into the Clone Wars microseries chapters 21 through 25. Now, you have watched the whole thing, yes?
Yes, I've watched the whole thing finally. I think when we left off on the last episode, I had not watched this group of episodes yet. So
I had sort of teased you because, for context, I watched these as a kid. Bradley's never seen them. I told you that this final batch of 5 episodes is not going to be what you think.
Right.
And was I correct on that?
You were definitely correct. Because I thought it was just gonna be like, I guess I thought it was going to be like the first, well, we'll call it the first 2 seasons, because I guess technically they were released in seasons. 1 hour movie and 1 hour movie. This second 1 hour movie felt longer. Essentially. I mean, it felt more like a cohesive story, or like stories.
Yeah, it very much was when they released it, because they had 12 to 15 minutes to work with, as opposed to 3 to 5. They had 12 to 15 minutes, so they could really slow down. And like, especially when we get into like chapter 24, chapters 23 and 24, especially 24, especially 24 when they're doing the chase sequence. I believe it's 24 where they're doing the chase sequence. They really got to slow down, and it feels a lot more like tense. Like the first volume is all action, because this is 3 to 5 minute segments.
Right.
And they got to do a lot more dramatic stuff in the second batch of them because they just had more time in the episodes.
Yeah, no, my this reminds me of one of my favorite episodes of Adventure Time. There's a joke in the beginning of the episode where you have the 2 main characters, Finn and Jake, and they're about to go into a dungeon, and he's like, I don't know, should we really go in there? And he's like, yeah, it'll only take about 11 minutes.
Oh my God.
It cracked me up, because it's like, technically, a 15-minute episode is really 11 or so minutes because of ads and stuff, right? Or commercial breaks. And so same with like when you do a 30-minute show or a 45-minute show, which is really an hour show, it just depends on what you're watching. But these definitely felt like a true cartoon because they were essentially 15-ish minutes a piece.
Anytime a show gets like meta with its humor, like Arrested Development doing the bit in the final season about trying to fit 22 houses in like a plot that's meant for like, or like trying to fit like 22 in a plot that's meant for 19 or something. It's a riff on the fact that they shortened the season, so they had to cram everything. I just love jokes like that. Those are just wonderful. All right, so if you are watching along with us at home, today we are going to be talking about chapter 21. So I wrote down the time codes for this last batch.
Nice.
So last time I gave you the rough plot points, but I can now give you the time codes.
Cool.
So we are watching 00 minutes and 00 seconds up through 12 minutes and 49 seconds. If you want to watch along with us, pause, go watch 13 minutes and come back. It begins with the clones and it ends with, according to my notes, right before the very obvious character model change. It's like R2 and Anakin fly off and that's the end of this episode.
There you go. Okay.
It's 12 minutes and 49 seconds in.
Cool.
So Bradley, what did you think of episode 1 or chapter 21, but episode 1 of this third season?
So this one, essentially picks up where the last one left off, where we had Grievous kind of essentially slaughtering the rest of the Jedi. And then we have, this one starts off with the ARC troopers kind of coming in to save them from Grievous.
I have a fun story about this, but I want to hear your impressions of the episode before I tell you the fun story.
Okay. I like it because a couple things. So one thing I liked was I liked how they didn't kill off R2, I would say named Jedi. I think in the group of Jedi that are there, I think only the unnamed ones or the like kind of the random ones are the ones that are killed.
3 of them survive: Shak Ti, Aayla Secura, and Ki-Adi-Mundi, who we all know have to survive.
Right, because they're in
Revenge of the Sith.
Exactly. Well, I think Shak Ti is only in the deleted scene, right?
Shak Ti is a very complicated relationship with Revenge of the Sith.
But yes, theoretically, I'm sure if they had at least a script or something from Revenge of the Sith, they knew like, okay, these 3 people cannot die, so they have to be alive in this.
They did. This came out, I believe. Did this come out before or after Revenge of the... This is the thing Charles didn't look up.
Oh, there you go.
This is the thing Charles didn't look up. Let's look up real fast.
Yeah, when did this come out? I mean, I have the air date is March 21st, 2005. So if that helps you.
Okay, so this aired March 21st, 2005. Revenge of the Sith released May 15th, 2005.
Damn. Okay. So there you go.
This series looks like chapter 25, which was the final chapter, aired March 25th. So yeah, literally this rolled up. But here's the thing, right, about spoilers. And we've talked about this on a previous episode that I then animated into a TikTok. That used to be very like laissez-faire about spoilers. Like if you were a Hyperspace Club member, you could literally log in and watch them film Revenge of the Sith. I read the first 3/4 of Revenge of the Sith 2 weeks before it came out in comic book form. Like the Lego Star Wars game came out and you could play through the whole plot of Revenge of the Sith in Lego form weeks before the movie came out. Like they did not care. They were basically just like, yeah, here's what happens in the movie. It's so bizarre nowadays. So the idea that like something could come out and basically be like, oh, here's where the movie starts months before the show, the actual movie came out. It's bizarre to think about now, but that's just how it was back then, is you sort of knew what it was.
Yeah, it's strange because they would never do that shit today.
Never.
Like, because I don't know why, but like everything has to be a fucking secret now. So
it's the mystery box. It's the fucking mystery box. Yeah. And frankly, I think it's incredibly stupid and dumb, and I've railed against it in the past. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's kind of like the idea that like if you know about the plot or you know about the thing, like you won't enjoy it when it comes out because you already knew. Like, what? I don't understand the logic there. Like, just because I know that, like, if you had told me the Grand Inquisitor was going to be in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show a year ago, you think I'm gonna watch the Obi-Wan
I
Kenobi
could
show
have
and be
told
like,
you several months ago because I knew several months ago. But
right? But do you think that's still gonna ruin the show for me? No, I'm excited. That makes me more
it's
excited.
a different experience
Yeah,
if you go in and watch it. And
blind.
it's
Yeah,
perfectly reasonable to say, I don't want to know anything, don't tell me. Like you don't really, you don't want to keep up with stuff. You want to know what's in the official marketing. That's it. And that's a perfectly valid way to see things. But I dislike the whole notion in general of marketing films as like events where, oh, you've got to come and see, it's going to be surprising. Yeah. And then it's like, it denigrates the film in a way to me, because they market it like, oh, you've got to come, and you don't appreciate the filmmaking as much, in my opinion. Right. If you market it as you're there for I got to rush out and see this and avoid spoilers, but we need to dive into this episode. So
I know. We could talk about other Star Wars stuff forever.
that we literally have a podcast. All right, let's dive into this episode real quick. Fortunately, these are short.
Yeah.
So this whole opening sequence with General Grievous exists because of Jet Luke. So according to Wikipedia, that I discovered while I was researching, I will actually just read from the Wikipedia. When Genndy Tartakovsky and his team began working on the episode, George Lucas's first instruction to the crew was to resolve the Hypori storyline the crew had begun in Chapter 20. He specified this because his son Jet was eager to find out how that particular story ends, as there were originally no plans to continue the series beyond Chapter 20. So Jet Lucas was like, how about we don't cliffhanger this shit? And George was like, okay, damn, I'll get my entire animation studio that I have working on me to do this.
Yeah, now that I think about it, okay, you can actually, what's funny is you can break up this chapter into about 4 to 5 mini chapters, which is hilarious because that's essentially all they're doing is combining.
They're ticking boxes of where they have to be to get to Revenge of the Sith. There's a few points I'm going to note that they're ticking boxes. Mm-hmm. To be like, okay, we got to move this along. We got to move this along. We got to move this along. Because remember, when they were making seasons 1 and 2, they didn't know the plot of Revenge of the Sith. And now they know the plot of Revenge of the Sith. Gotcha. So they're having to like rush things along. They're having to like explain some of the choices they made, especially with Anakin.
Yeah.
In the first 2 seasons, because like, oh, now we know what happens in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, you almost like, I feel like this chapter alone is just them being like setting up like, okay, let's just conclude everything that we need to conclude and make sure you know all the information you need to know for like the next few chapters, because the next few chapters are going to explain what's going to happen in Revenge of the Sith. So like, let's go.
The next few chapters are the actual plot.
Yeah.
And this one was basically like, we need to
a summary episode almost
real fast move us to the point where we can actually like do that plot. So we start off the opening sequence is, like Bradley said, a bunch of ARC troopers run up, save Ki-Adi-Mundi, Shakti, Aayla Secura from Grievous. It's a very cool sequence. We finally got a clone head. It's the back of the head for 2 seconds, but that literally was the opening shot. I was like, yes, there is a clone head.
There's a person under there.
There's a person under there. Yes. Finally, the show is acknowledging that. This gentleman's name is Commander Fordo. Is this Red ARC Trooper's name?
Commander Frodo. Okay.
Commander Frodo, yes. And he's going to carry the ring through the last few chapters. I don't believe he had a name in the first 2 seasons, but he has one here.
Got it.
Doesn't look like he's shown up in anything really except for this. So, but he's our main clone.
Cool.
For these few episodes. I love how dumb the droids are, because the ship flies over and drops the little bombs, and they all just like look at them for a second and then start shooting. It's like, babes, they were flying over you for a good chunk of the time, and you only notice when they drop the bombs on you. Although, speaking of the bombs, I love the ship and I love the clone weapons in this.
I do like the ship because it reminds me of Rebels a bit. With the like
painting. Nose art.
Yeah.
It's very
like
Sabine Wren. It's the
Yeah,
type of
very
thing
Sabine.
that Sabine Wren would do. It's like it's the precursor to like the nose art that we're gonna see in like the 2008 series. Grievous fighting with his legs is really weird to me.
I love it.
It's so weird.
I love it.
I love it, but
Grievous
it's
could.
so
I
weird.
want Grievous to pull out more legs. That's how much I love it.
Well, good news. Later on, in the final episode, he will in fact pull out more appendages.
More appendages. Great, because they realized, oh shit.
He can split his arms apart.
That's right.
I do find it super interesting. Right as they're rescuing them, Ki-Adi-Mundi really wants to go after Grievous.
Mm-hmm.
And Fordo's like, you have wounded and they will die without medical treatment. It's curious to me that Ki-Adi-Mundi is the one who's like, oh no, we got to go after Grievous, because that seems like a very un-Jedi thing to do.
Yeah, I guess he's just kind of like, I don't want to say he's not grieving, but I think he's blinded by not rage, but you know what I mean. Like it's like one of those things where like you're so distraught because he just lost 3 Jedi in front of him.
Right.
One of them looks like it might be the same species of him and like slash was his Padawan or something like that at some point. And then the other one was just a younger Padawan, obviously, that was crushed to death.
Right. Oh, I think it's an interesting choice because it sort of highlights more of the Jedi losing themselves in the war, which is something that this series doesn't have a lot of time to explore. Right. Like something that the Clone Wars series, the 2008 series, portrayed really well. And I thought that a lot of the media leading up to in the original Clone Wars multimedia project didn't really cover is the whole idea of this is not how the Jedi are supposed to be. This is not what they're supposed to be doing. And it's a problem, and they don't notice until it's too late because they really believe they're doing the right thing. I just thought it was a really interesting character choice.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to jump ahead, but when they have the council meeting, you see similar flashes of this too, where they're all kind of like bickering about like what it means like to be a Jedi or to go through the trials and do something like the Jedi way or something like that. It's just interesting that they're arguing about that. But then, yeah, I mean, you have this tiny little character beat of, now we have to kill him. No, that's not what we do.
No, well, we don't. That's as good a segue as any, because we move on. We get like a little vision of like little Anakin, like little Phantom Menace Anakin. Look, I mentioned in an early episode, I will mention again, and I will mention another time throughout these recordings, that anytime something from episode 1 shows up, that makes me very happy.
Very happy.
And the reason is because episode 1 was shit on relentlessly. Like it was the butt of every joke in the early 2000s. People have kind of a nice appreciation for it now, but back then, and part of the reason I don't like Attack of the Clones, and we won't get into my complicated feelings on Attack of the Clones, but part of the reason it grates me a little bit is I feel like some of the things in it were a response to criticism of the Phantom Menace, that they backpedaled and they tried to like erase a lot of that. Like the whole thing with Machete Order is you remove episode 1 entirely from the order.
Which I disagree with.
I 100% disagree with.
I disagree with that. Yeah.
So anytime that they bring up something from episode 1 in the supplementary media like this, I'm like, yes, you're acknowledging that episode 1 happened. But we get the vision of little Anakin, and then we move on to this council meeting.
Before we go too far into that, explain to me something about this vision, because I'm not quite understanding how it's possible.
It's Yoda is seeing a vision of Qui-Gon having Anakin go into the Dagobah tree.
Right. But when the fuck did he find the time to do that between the time he found Anakin and the time he fucking got killed by Darth Maul?
It's not actually happening. It's metaphorical for Yoda to show Yoda that Anakin needs to be tested, and Qui-Gon's faith in him is what is driving him forward and should be trusted. I
just thought it was weird because they bring up Qui-Gon a little bit later.
They do. Qui-Gon is all over these episodes.
That's why I'm like confused, because I was like, this is a weird thing that they're showing us. But then, not to jump ahead, but when Anakin's like, you're not Qui-Gon Jinn. Bitch, you knew Qui-Gon for like 2 weeks at most.
Yeah, and like,
why would he even care?
It's interesting because the first 2 seasons
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is just a dick to Anakin the whole time.
Right.
If you're watching it all in order like we have been, the first time Anakin genuinely makes Obi-Wan shut the fuck up is when he says, "You're not as good of a master as Qui-Gon would have been." Because that's a genuine concern for Obi-Wan, that he kind of got paired up as the leftover.
Right.
Qui-Gon should have been the one to teach Anakin, but Obi-Wan kind of had to step up and do it, and Obi-Wan feels inadequate. So it's like the first time that manages to hit him. I love just the presence of Qui-Gon in Volume 2.
Mm-hmm.
Just he only physically appears the one time in the tree, but he's mentioned a bunch
Right.
throughout the entire thing. And like you feel his impact on the world in a way that a lot of Clone Wars media didn't acknowledge at the time and still doesn't acknowledge.
Yeah, I almost feel like he's been so left out of the series as a whole, like because he's in Phantom Menace and he dies in Phantom Menace. Spoiler alert.
Spoilers for the Phantom Menace that came out in 1999.
Spoilers. Yeah, it is kind of weird because he's such a prominent like idea and character in this that affects things that happen later on, that he just gets silenced in that movie. And because it was a movie that people weren't necessarily fond of at the time, like he just gets forgotten in the other media. So I feel like we're almost at a point in time where we kind of need a Qui-Gon renaissance. Like I feel like we need him to come back in some
boy capacity. I have some good news for you. Master and Apprentice is a very good book, guys, by the way, by Claudia Gray. But then also we are getting a new Qui-Gon book, actually. Padawan is going to have Qui-Gon in it because they're releasing a lot of Obi-Wan material to tie into Obi-Wan, and one of them is a book about when he was a Padawan. Still no story about what happened with Satine, which I believe is intentional, because we all know that if they told the story of Obi-Wan and Satine, they would have to tell us that Corky is Obi-Wan and Satine's son. And they don't want to do that. They're cowards. They are cowards. And they don't want to reveal what we have all figured out, those of us who see the truth, that Corky is in fact Corky Kenobi. Do not give me that look at the Zoom call, Bradley.
So what happens when Corky shows up in Obi-Wan Kenobi show and you're gonna are you gonna shit your pants?
I do. That is exactly what happens. I will lose my mind. Thank you. If we go through we move back to the council meeting. Obi-Wan's promoting Anakin because, again, he was an apprentice in this. Now we know he's a knight by the time of Revenge of the Sith, so we've real fast got to promote him. They're having this whole debate. Appa Rancisis, my enemy. I'm unfairly biased against Appa Rancisis because I've read Tempest Runner, or rather I've listened to Tempest Runner. And Otto Rancisis shows up as a character in Tempest Runner and interacts with Lorna D in her backstory.
Okay.
And I'm not going to spoil it for you, Bradley, because you will come back to the High Republic at a point where you're able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't want to spoil it for you, but Appa Rancisis and I have beef over the events of Tempest Runner. So when he starts talking about Anakin in this, I'm like, Appo, shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Shut up.
I love his fingernails. Or like his fingers are like
little
these
weird
fingernails. Yeah, they're like these weird spiral, like I don't know. It just looks the character wise, design wise. Yeah, it just looks weird. I love it.
Love when Star Wars gets weird.
But he's the slug creature.
He's like the snake guy. Like you see him coiled up.
Yeah.
I did find it interesting. I want to talk about Mace's line or somebody's line.
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine's no, it's not Mace. Somebody else says Palpatine has been requesting Anakin be knighted for months. And Mace is like, Palpatine needs to mind his fucking business.
Right. He's a political leader. He doesn't have any say in Jedi matters.
Like, girl, stay in your lane.
Yes.
Okay? Stay in your lane. I find this interesting because in Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine meddling in Jedi business is a key thing. So this is like retroactively trying to be like, oh, Palpatine's been meddling in because we know what the script for Revenge of the Sith is now.
Mm-hmm.
Whoops. I find that just super interesting. I also wonder if that's not some of the hesitation in knighting Anakin, because Palpatine wants them to do it. And they're already a little sus of Palpatine because this is the 2003 to 2005 Clone Wars series, and we are not subtle.
I also think that this is just them, picking and choosing which, laws or mandates they want to follow or traditions they want to follow. You know what I mean? Because like on the one hand, you could be like, well, Jedis are not supposed to be military, leaders / power or whatever, where they're just supposed to help those in need, not, control armies and stuff like that. And then he turns around and says like, well, we can't make him a Jedi Knight because that's not part of our traditions. Like, what? You're just picking and choosing.
You are deciding the bits that you, at the risk of getting like political on the show,
right?
You are deciding the bits that you want to keep.
Exactly.
And you are twisting it to suit your own ends. And that is a recipe for disaster. Maybe the Jedi following the letter of their code and not necessarily the spirit it was meant to invoke is a negative thing. But also, like, the people saying maybe Anakin shouldn't be knighted, part of it is they're kind of right. Like they've got the wrong reasons, but they're also kind of right. Like, just based on the information of the show, Anakin is a hot-headed, impulsive little bitch, like the whole time.
Although Obi-Wan Kenobi brings up a good point, though. He's like, I mean, I don't know what the trials are because we never really talked about like in the show or the other show.
I think we know what they are from supplemental material, but
okay.
Like, it's like Trail of the Flesh, Trail of the Spirit, Trail of the
but
whatever.
He brings up points like, just because he hasn't done traditional like trials doesn't mean he hasn't done trials, right? Like he's been forced to do these things that regular Padawans don't have to deal with. So he had to fight a Sith Lord on a planet by herself. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that regular Padawans don't have to deal with. Or he faced Count Dooku and got his arm cut off. Like there other stuff happened to him that makes him a little bit more experienced, I think, than other Padawans.
I find it super interesting that Obi-Wan is making these points. Because one episode ago, last fucking episode, Obi-Wan was like lecturing Anakin to death.
Right, like
about
shouldn't have fought
that bad, being correct, but lecturing him to death. And now he's sitting in the council being and like,
using it as an excuse. Yeah,
Anakin's my best buddy, actually.
Right.
And like, again, we have the script for Revenge of the Sith now. We know they're supposed to be friends.
It's also been a whole entire year since I've seen you guys, so clearly my thoughts have changed.
It's definitely not been like 5 minutes.
Right, exactly.
I don't know how much time has passed since.
Can't be long.
It's not that long, I don't think.
No, because his little ponytail is still there, so
his little Padawan braid.
Right.
I just find it super interesting that like Obi-Wan's done not quite a 180, but he's done like a 100. And then like, oh, actually, Anakin's totally ready for the trials. When if you look at the events of Volume 1, Anakin is very clearly not ready for the trials.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, no, let's just actually skip the trials and make him a knight. But they do ultimately, I guess, Yoda makes a decision on it. We cut to Anakin walking down the street.
Not even walking down the street. Classic New York shot that is in every New York movie where you have your main character in the center of the street and then everybody else is the crowd is walking. It's this huge crowd walking with them. They're in the middle of the screen and you can somehow pick them out in the middle of the screen.
It's got the color like gradient.
Yeah.
Up it.
Oh, it's like rainbow.
It's got the weird alien. Like this show is incredibly gay. It's got the weird alien like they're just awesome creatures.
All kinds of designs. Yeah.
In the shot.
Well, if any shot in this whole entire franchise or like this whole thing that they did was Samurai Jack, this would have been it. Like, this shot alone, I was like, this was made by the people who made Samurai Jack. Is like, this right here? Just
the cool alien designs, the use of color, the use of like where they placed the different sized aliens, like just absolutely fucking beautiful. Like, absolutely beautiful. Like, we're not going to talk about specific aliens this shot because I could probably do a 45-minute episode on this one shot. Remembering, guys, that we do record these we are recording these episodes in batches. So sometimes we get to do a live, like the thing Charles fucked up. We don't have a thing Charles fucked up, but Charles scrolled down to see if he could find some trivia. And he actually was looking at the behind the scenes section, and it actually addresses a question we literally just had, which is, when does this council meeting take place?
Oh.
So originally as scripted, it is placed directly after the events of season 1.
Okay.
However, there was another novel that came out called Jedi Trial. And in Jedi Trial, according to Wikipedia, some stuff happens where Anakin's like not quite a knight yet, but it leads up to that knighting.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's about how he reaches that point. So this meeting in the Legends canon was moved to after that novel in order to not contradict it. So it's both, actually.
Okay.
I prefer something else being in the middle because otherwise it makes no goddamn sense. Returning to the street, Anakin is followed by a mysterious figure, clearly doing an Asajj Ventress kind of bait and switch here. It is revealed to be Padme.
Yay.
They make out for a bit, and then they have a really fucking dramatic conversation where Anakin's like, we mustn't hide our forbidden love. What then will we do? And Padme's like, I'm gonna be the most reasonable person in this entire like fucking show, and just explain to, like, he's over here doing this swanning dramatics, and when she starts talking, I'm like, oh yeah, no, everything she says is completely correct.
Well, she talks, it's so funny because like he's so dumb. Like she's literally like, dude, when the war is over, then we can deal with our relationship thing with the Jedi. Like we can figure it out. Like he's like, oh my God, like if we don't do this, we don't figure this now, we're never going to get to be together forever and love each other forever, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, no, we can just wait until the war is over. Like do your duty, figure out, the war. And then after the war,
well,
we'll tell people, we'll figure it out.
He's also like 20 in this. And no shade to people listening to the show in their early 20s, because I do know it's a sizable portion of our demographic. I have met straight men in their early 20s, and a lot of them are dramatic as fuck. They won't show it, but they are. So this makes complete sense to me that Anakin's like, no, we have to deal with this right now. I've decided to make this a problem. And Padme's like, there's a bigger problem. It's called the war that we're currently fighting. We can deal with it after, maybe solve this first. Then Anakin, like, they're talking about like being in the dark, and Anakin literally, oh my God, Anakin literally looks at her and goes,
I don't like
this. You look good in the dark.
I don't like that line.
This is a kid show for kids.
Okay. Wait, we need to talk about what that line even means, because here's my issue with that line. I don't know if maybe I just took it this way, but when you tell someone you look good in the dark, it means I cannot see your features clearly, therefore you're attractive. Meaning I will fuck you because you're ugly if the lights are turned off, Bradley, because I can't tell the difference.
Bradley, you talk like somebody who's had the lights turned off on him during sex.
You know what I'm saying, though. Like, that is not a compliment.
I do.
That is not a good thing to
which
tell
is why
someone.
I'm taking the opportunity to bully you.
Anyway, speaking of sex,
we'll
get
to that. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I heard that line and I'm like, clearly it's meant to be like, oh, you look good in the bedroom lights. And I'm like, this is a show for children.
And then they immediately start kissing after they're like, oh yeah? Like,
God, I hate straight people.
I hate it.
Yeah, C-3PO shows up. And we think, oh, good. The awkwardness is over. He shows up. So remember, another thing that I mentioned was that you brought up that he has the silver plating.
Yeah.
In volume 1. And I said, well, that's because he has the silver plating in Attack of the Clones. They didn't have the script for Revenge of the Sith yet.
Right.
So now the
Which is
characters
gold,
have the
yeah.
script for Revenge of the Sith, and they've suddenly realized that he needs to have gold plating.
Mhm.
So they make a point to be like, oh, C-3PO works for a senator now, and so
Right.
obviously he has to have gold plating. And then they're like, why don't you show us the gold plating? And he's like, oh, but I certainly could not. And they're like, I'll do it anyway. He does this fucking like burlesque, like dramatic Anastasia. It's grandmama, it's me. Fucking
Whoever wrote this scene / animated this scene / colored this scene deserves jail. Jail, dishonor on you, dishonor on your family,
jail
dishonor on your
immediately.
cow. Like the whole, this was so wrong on so many levels. The way that he
Dungeon.
slowly reveals his naked body to Anakin, and it's not even like a take off your thing and show him your naked body. It's literally like he is posed in a feminine, like his arms are in, his waist is like curved.
These curves. Yeah,
yes, his waist is curved and cinched, and it's like this sexy, like bombshell, like pose. And he's like, oh, I'm just revealing my beautiful body. Like I have nothing to be ashamed of. Like jail. There's your TikTok. Jail.
Look, I am all for like sex positivity. I'm a whore.
Yeah, not for an android.
But when you're drawing the droid with the sexy crabs purely so you could do this, oh my god, dungeon, like 10 million years dungeon, no trial. And then Anakin responds with impressive, most impressive, to which of course I had to write in my notes, we get it, he's gonna be Vader.
Yeah, he's most impressed.
Yeah, so that's that scene. You're gonna exist in my nightmares. Also, I laughed so hard I gave myself hiccups. Because it's just, I'm watching this at work. I'm watching this at work because I'd finished my work for the day and I was just sitting around. I'm looking around like, is anybody like near me? Should I be? I'm less worried scrolling through Twitter at work, trying to cure these damn hiccups that I've now given myself thinking about this scene. Moving on to the next scene, maybe that will help.
Yeah.
So Anakin gets called back. He has this argument with Obi-Wan that we've sort of already touched on, where they have this argument and then Anakin kind of like apologizes, and like they're really fast trying to rush them into the relationship they have in Revenge of the Sith. And Obi-Wan's like, we'll come into this dark room. And we get to see a Jedi knighting ceremony, which, if I'm remembering correctly, this is the first time we've seen that.
Yeah.
Ever. And we sort of take it for granted now because like it just pops up. Like there's multiple, this is the knighting that they will use forever. You get like Obi-Wan's like beaming with pride. It's a very nice scene. And then R2 and like R2 rolls up, projects like an image of Padme, and then Anakin takes off. And R2 is with him now. And this was another thing, Volume 1. Why is R2 not with Anakin? Because they didn't have the script for Revenge of the Sith. So the characters got the script for Revenge of the Sith and realized that R2 has to be with Anakin now. So R2 takes off with Anakin. That is the end of the episode, unless you have any other notes, Bradley.
Just the creepy Padme keeping Anakin's braid in her drawer with all of his teeth.
So interesting. I skipped a note. Actually, I skipped a note that I'm glad you reminded me of. It's a really interesting musical cue that plays when she puts the thing, closes the box and puts it away. Did you catch that? They play a few notes of the Vader theme.
Oh, that's weird.
When she puts the
doesn't match.
Locket away.
That doesn't make sense.
It's a very bizarre choice. And I could overanalyze this and be like, the transition is marking the transition to the road that will eventually lead him to become Vader, but it is a stretch.
It's a stretch, yeah.
So Bradley, you want to talk about some voice actors?
Yeah, let's talk about some voice actors.
Let's talk about some voice actors. This is the last round of voice actors we did.
Okay, cool.
What we're going to do, because there aren't really any new ones that pop up. I mentioned all the way back when we were covering the Mace Windu episodes, I said Mace Windu has a really interesting voice actor, but I'm not going to tell you who it is yet. Well, in the back 5 episodes, he does actually start speaking. So now we can finally talk about who is voicing Mace Windu here. Mace Windu is being voiced by an actor named Terrence Carson, sometimes credited as T.C. Carson. You might know him from a few different things, but the one that is relevant to us is he was in a show called Star Wars: The Clone Wars from 2008 to 2020. He voiced Mace Windu.
Oh.
So I will never get tired of that joke.
Okay.
So rather like James Arnold Taylor and Tom Kane and some of the others, it's the same guy from the original Clone Wars series that's voicing him here. The other one I wanted to bring up is the guy who is voicing both Otto Rancisis and Qui-Gon Jinn. The gentleman's name is, I apologize, I'm going to butcher the fuck out of this, Fred Tatasciore. Very, very big voice actor. Another one who's done a lot of things. He's been on, he was in He-Man and Masters of the Universe. I did watch the pilot for that. I don't ever think I went past the pilot. I need to go back and finish that.
Wait, he was in Revelation?
No.
Or the OG show?
The OG show.
Oh, okay.
He's in the OG show, but he's done a lot of voice work. He was in Star Wars: The Old Republic. He's done a lot of Family Guy. He was in Rugrats, apparently. Another big voice actor, but he's voice acting Qui-Gon Jinn.
Cool.
And Qui-Gon Jinn and Otto Rancisis is here. So that is your fun fact of voice actors. I'm just scrolling through trying to find something that I super want to shout out. But this guy's been... he was in Star Wars Resistance. He was in a couple episodes of that. He's in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. He's Master Nostaral. If you play Star Wars The Old Republic, he's Master Nostaral. Mm-hmm. I just scroll down a little bit to hit start hitting the Star Wars stuff, but we got there. That's all the dude has too big. I've been scrolling for like 3 minutes on his page, and I'm in 2018. That's how many credits this guy has.
So he's been around the block.
He's been around the block. Yep. So, all right, Bradley, final thoughts on chapter 21.
I'm excited to move on because, like we said earlier on, chapter 21 is essentially a end cap of the first 2 seasons of this show. It's essentially like hey, here is the transition point to where the show now jumps forward. Oh shit,
we got another season.
Yeah.
And we need to real fast get to the point where Revenge of the Sith is.
Exactly. So
we have to explain all this now.
I liked it. It felt like a little bit of a quick time, but it was long enough to where I felt like it was paced well. I think the next couple episodes are better paced because they're kind of just more singular stories. They're not 2 or 3 stories shoved into one episode, essentially. So
this one feels a lot like a prologue.
Well, it also feels like the previous seasons where if they were like they are on Disney Plus, mashed together as one cohesive thing, this is a similar feel to it. So
all right. Well, Bradley, if you want to go ahead and run the socials, we will see you guys next week for chapter 22.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gays.
Did Charles fuck something up? Email us and let us know at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at goldsquadgays, and you can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at goldsquadrongays. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gays, where we post this podcast as well as exclusive video content.
Please join us next week and every week for another episode of Gold Squadron Gays.
Good grief.
I'll cut out all your hiccups, so just hiccup and then just
this is going to be an interesting this is going to be an interesting one to try to edit.
Yeah, for sure.
Good luck with that.